Canada is turning a strong aluminum industry into a bigger advantage, while many factories in the United States are facing higher costs. A metal that helps build cars, airplanes, and food cans is now becoming much more expensive. Trade rules are changing. Prices are climbing. Big companies are paying more. The effects are spreading across North America's manufacturing industry. Canada remains the largest supplier of primary aluminum to the United States. In 2024, Canada shipped about 2.7 million metric tons of primary aluminum to the US. That accounted for more than half of all aluminum used in the American market. Around 3/4 of US aluminum imports came from Canada. More than 90% of Canada's aluminum exports were sold to the United States, creating a market worth about $16.7 billion. Nearly all of this aluminum is produced at 10 smelters, with 9 located in Quebec and 1 in Kitimat, British Columbia. For many years, this trade relationship helped both countries. Canada supplied large amounts of low-carbon aluminum, while American manufacturers received a stable source of metal used in transportation, aerospace, construction, packaging, and defense. Aluminum became a key material because it is strong, lightweight, and resistant to corrosion. It is used in aircraft frames, vehicle parts, beverage cans, electrical systems, and many industrial products. That long-standing supply chain is now facing new pressure. Aluminum prices have continued to rise during 2026. The London Metal Exchange aluminum price has increased sharply since the beginning of the year. Market pressure also pushed the US Midwest aluminum premium higher. The Midwest transaction price reached a record level, increasing the cost paid by manufacturers across the United States. Companies buying aluminum now face higher prices before the material even enters the production line. Trade policy has added another layer of cost. The Trump administration revised Section 232 tariffs on aluminum imports. The updated measures expanded how duties are calculated and increased tariff rates for many imported aluminum products. These changes raised costs for manufacturers that depend on imported aluminum, including companies that have relied on Canadian supply for decades. At the same time, Canada's retaliatory tariffs remain in place, keeping trade tensions active between the two countries. The higher aluminum price is reaching industries that depend on large amounts of the metal every day. Automakers are among the biggest users. Modern vehicles contain hundreds of pounds of aluminum because manufacturers use lightweight materials to improve fuel efficiency and electric vehicle performance. As aluminum becomes more expensive, production costs also rise. Industry estimates indicate that steel and aluminum tariffs are adding roughly $1,500 to the cost of every vehicle built in the United States. That increase affects manufacturers throughout the supply chain. Every company buying aluminum for body panels, engine components, wheels, suspension parts, or battery systems must manage higher material expenses before a vehicle reaches the dealership. General Motors has already warned investors about the financial impact. The company said tariffs could increase its costs by an estimated $3 to $4 billion during 2026. Those additional expenses come before other costs, such as labor, transportation, and energy are included. Large manufacturers often absorb part of these costs, but higher production expenses can also move through the supply chain. Ford also remains exposed because aluminum is used across many of its vehicle platforms. Pickup trucks, SUVs, electric vehicles, and commercial vehicles all require large amounts of aluminum. Rising material costs increase manufacturing expenses even if production volumes remain unchanged. The aerospace industry is facing similar pressure. Aircraft manufacturers require high-quality aluminum for wings, fuselage structures, landing gear components, and many internal systems. Commercial aviation depends on aluminum because it combines strength with low weight. When aluminum prices rise, aircraft production becomes more expensive. Companies throughout the aerospace supply chain must pay more for raw materials before final assembly begins. Boeing is among the manufacturers closely watching these developments. The company purchases aluminum through suppliers that are also affected by higher metal prices and changing trade rules. Increased raw material costs can influence production budgets across commercial and defense programs. The impact extends well beyond automobiles and aircraft. Beverage companies also rely heavily on aluminum. Molson Coors uses aluminum cans for many of its products. Packaging manufacturer Ball Corporation is one of the world's largest producers of aluminum beverage cans. As aluminum prices increase, packaging costs also rise. Companies must either absorb those costs or pass part of the increase through the supply chain. Construction companies also depend on aluminum for windows, doors, roofing materials, electrical equipment, and commercial buildings. Higher prices increase the cost of many projects. Manufacturers producing industrial machinery, consumer products, and electrical equipment face similar challenges because aluminum is used across thousands of products. Canadian producers are also responding to changing market conditions. For decades, the United States purchased the overwhelming majority of Canadian aluminum exports. Now, producers are increasingly looking at customers in Europe and Asia. Expanding into other markets reduces dependence on a single buyer and gives Canadian exporters more flexibility when trade conditions change. One industry executive described Canada's aluminum industry by saying it has become one of the cleanest sources of a primary aluminum in the world. That advantage comes from hydroelectric power used by most Canadian smelters. As global manufacturers seek lower carbon supply chains, Canadian aluminum remains attractive in markets beyond North America. Canada's aluminum industry also has another advantage. Most Canadian smelters use hydroelectric power to produce primary aluminum. That gives Canadian aluminum a lower carbon footprint than aluminum produced in many other parts of the world. As more manufacturers look for lower emission materials, Canadian producers are using this advantage to attract customers outside North America. European and Asian buyers have shown growing interest in Canadian aluminum because of both supply security and environmental standards. At the same time, American aluminum users are facing tighter market conditions. The United States imports a large share of the primary aluminum used by its manufacturing sector because domestic smelting capacity is much smaller than total demand. Even though the United States has its own aluminum industry, domestic production does not supply enough primary aluminum to meet the needs of automakers, aircraft manufacturers, construction companies, and packaging producers. Imports remain an important part of the supply chain. Higher aluminum prices are also affecting businesses that make everyday products. Beverage cans, food containers, household goods, electrical equipment, and building materials all depend on aluminum. Manufacturers buying these products pay the market price for aluminum plus regional premiums and any applicable import duties. As those costs increase, companies face pressure to reduce expenses in other areas or raise prices for customers. Industry analysts continue to watch whether Canadian exporters shift a larger share of shipments to Europe and Asia. If that trend continues, competition for Canadian aluminum could increase. US manufacturers would have to compete with buyers from other regions for the same supply. That could place additional pressure on prices across North America. Companies throughout the automotive, aerospace, packaging, and industrial sectors are closely monitoring aluminum markets because changes in supply, trade policy, and global demand directly affect production costs and future investment decisions.